What up, guys? Another Adonis review. Today I'm going to redo Resident Evil 8, but now for the VR version for PSVR2. And I'm excited to re-review it with new, fresh eyes on the VR2. Now, to kind of go over some basics on this game that you should know if you were thinking about buying it, the story mode alone is what has been converted into VR. Unfortunately, the DLC, Rose of Shadow, or whatever it's called, has not been converted, which is a bummer. It is a third-person game, so I was skeptical that it was going to be converted in the first place, but it would be a sight to see if they did convert it over, because that DLC was really good as well. It was essentially the whole Resident Evil 8, but kind of shortened and into like a 1/3, like the same story, but in 1/3 the adventure. So I do hope that they eventually will add that. I mean, if they can add Resident Evil 4 into VR, which of course they've already done with the old one, so I don't know why they can't do it with the new one, which is their plans. Why can't they add, Rose's adventure? So all things is maybe a good time, but even with just the story mode, it's still quite a game. And another great thing about this is that for some reason, this game has gone on incredible sales, and you can get it at a very great price when it's by far one of the best examples of a great VR experience. Like, this is the definition of why all games should be switched to VR. I feel like Resident Evil 7 started that trend, but I don't think Resident Evil 7 adapted the motion trigger, so that was kind of, it still wasn't even fully all in, and so it did a great job at converting itself. But this one went completely all in with their motion controllers, and you pull the gun, put in the back of your triggers, open your coat, and grab grenades from your coat, and, everything's been completely adapted to virtual reality and using those controllers, so that's great. Now, quickly going into the story, if you have no idea what this is and you decided to get this game maybe for VR and you never played it, I would say, that's a smart reason to wait, because this is, it's a fantastic game, only made better by how perfectly they swifted it over into VR. But essentially the story goes is that this is 3 years after Resident Evil 7. You have a family and your daughter's born, and then one day Chris Redfield, one of the main stars from the Resident Evil titles, breaks down your door, kills your wife, and, grabs your baby and takes you somewhere and knocks you out. And then all of a sudden you wake up, I think being attacked or something, and your baby's been kidnapped. Your wife is obviously dead, for what you know. And everyone that was taking you is gone. And you essentially are in this weird village that you have to cut through to get your baby back ribs. So after that, essentially the story breaks into kind of like a mythology of sorts, which is kind of my favorite things about this game, is that it breaks down into essentially 4 lords that kind of reign over this village, that go into old legends. There's like a vampire castle lord, there's a fishman lord, the fishman of the lake or whatever. There is a werewolf lord kind of guy, and then there is kind of like a death weaver doll maker lady. So essentially the game breaks into 5 parts, where 4 of them is you kind of taking down each lord by themselves, and they have their own kind of area that they govern. And then you have the center area, which is the village, which kind of is the main hub of the open world, where you kind of go house to house to get loot and find secret stuff and pick pockets and shit like that to get loot. It's kind of your center area to regroup before you go into a new big fight, which I think is genius. And it really divides the game out perfectly. The game is somewhere between 10 to 15 hours, depending on how quick you try to cut through it. So it's definitely a good amount of time. It definitely feels like a perfect amount of game. Not too long, not too short for a single player. So How is the game overall? I'm sure you could tell, but again, I think this is a fantastic game. And again, and it is the definition of a game that should show you why all games should shoot for being passed over. The graphics are truly phenomenal. And there was kind of a grading to the graphics in normal, not VR mode, and I feel like that's been cleaned out only so much better when you see it in VR. Everything is crisp and looks amazing. I mean, there's some parts where I'm like, man, if you had someone over and you showed them this part, they would blow their mind. A lot of slack is given to this game that it's not scary. And everyone will say, I believe, that the doll maker house baby scene is scary no matter who you are or when you play it. But there's two boss lore areas that are only made that much more scarier when you're playing. I mean, playing the doll maker in VR will make you shit your pants. And even if you go into the Heisenberg factory with this weird mutant, abomination creatures that he's brought back to life and turned into like tormented machine monsters, that's definitely more intimidating in VR, and you'll see that when you play this game. You also have a knife. Yeah, typically in the game you have a knife and it's just pathetic and worthless and not worth anything. And it is kind of nice how they've adapted that in this game. They put it on your sleeve, again, fully immersed into VR. So it's no longer kind of taking up a slot for your 4 guns. It's now like a side thing you can just pull. And it's like a throwing knife. They've adapted it perfectly good for it being like a throwing knife that you can throw at things. It's still pretty weak. But another thing that's pretty cool about this game that they've adapted is they have like a VR mode challenge where, just basically where they have like bobbleheads in the past. They have like goat dolls that are hidden. And if you find them all, you get rewards. And essentially the rewards get better. There are weapons and whatnot that you can get as the game goes on. And I believe one of the last rewards, I can't remember the name of it, but it's essentially a lightsaber. So if you find all the hidden goats around the map, your sword or your knife that's on your sleeve will turn into a lightsaber. And I guess when you hold down both triggers, it becomes like a double-sided lightsaber. It still, unfortunately, doesn't do lightsaber-y things in the sense of, slicing someone straight in half if you hit them with it, which is what you would hope with a lightsaber. It does do a bit more damage than what a typical knife would do, but yeah, you're not slicing things in half. I do wish there was a way that you could maybe turn this into like insane mode and it would do that, and they just send more creatures at you to kind of balance out the fact that you're slicing them in half. But who knows? Maybe one day they'll do it. But yeah, I think this is a fantastic game to get. Like I said, right now it's on sale for $20. I mean, that's a fucking steal. One of the best VR games. I guarantee you there's 2 games that kind of are the cream of the crop when it came to this coming out. And that's this Resident Evil 8 and Horizon Call of the Mountain. I guarantee you Call of the Mountain isn't $20 right now. It's probably holding its price quite well. But since this has been out for a while, even so it wasn't in VR for that whole time, it's gone down in price. And like I said, I think at the time of this video, it's on sale for $20. I mean, it really is a question if you have a PSVR2. Because if you do, and you don't have this game, it's a no-brainer. Get it. For a fact, it's going to be a fantastic VR experience. One of the best experiences, not just for PSVR2, but I think in all ways, shapes, and forms. It's kind of one of the highest rankings. So, we only have, after this, to hope that, Resident Evil 4 comes out next. I mean, I would love for the Rose DLC to come out as well in VR and then adapt it from the third person to the first, so they can do that. And then also maybe pushing Resident Evil 7 from PS4 to PS5. They do have it for PS5, but it's not adapted for the VR, which I hope comes out as well. But I think Resident Evil titles have made a staple for themselves adapting into VR. I hope it's a staple that only continues stronger in the future. It doesn't go in short. I think this is the way games should be played nowadays, honestly. Eventually you'll get over the motion sickness and all that shit, so get it. Story is a perfect amount of time. The way they've adapted VR is fantastic. The graphics are amazing. Story mode is great. The 4 bosses that go into mythical creatures that they even adapt and how that makes sense in the Resident Evil world. Like, why would you have a vampire fucking or a werewolf in a fucking zombie game? Well, they created explanations for that, so it all makes sense. So I get it if I were you. If you get it, you don't like it, let me know. If you do get it, you did like it, I'd like to hear your thoughts.